We are now at the final part of our design process. So we are bringing all of the elements together that we have worked on up until this point. I have brought the three renders. I had a few more, but I elected to choose three of my favorite renders out of Character Creator and bring them into Photoshop. And obviously, this is the render that most closely matches the approved sketch. The other two that we're going to showcase are different conceptual iterations based on this initial idea. So the sketches were meant to get us started, and as as the work of a concept designer goes, the point is to deliver a number of different options to a client, and obviously filter in from that point. So I like to cast a wide net and filter in to that one that ultimately gets chosen for whatever the project is. So on this one, you can see this was the character utilizing elements from that existing armor set from the Reallusion store. And of course, with this being a sort of out-of-the-box design, I wanted to make sure that I went in and just changed it up a bit so it wasn't that design one-to-one. You can see we've made some further adjustments to the environment as a whole. So I've gone in and added some caution stripes, some graffiti to the back concrete wall. But for the most part, this is the render out of Character Creator 3, which it is phenomenal. You can see all that wonderful skin material that comes out of Skin Gen 3 looks fantastic. The material read of the textures on the individual components that were available through the content store, it all works together beautifully, especially the hair. It's something that at this point I don't have to paint, and that's a wonderful thing. I can certainly go in and make modifications and paint into it a little bit, but to render that all myself, it's all about efficiency, and if I don't have to spend the time doing that, it really gives me the freedom to spend more time on the fun stuff and the design portion of this process. So. As you can see too, I've added some textural details to the ground plane, added some more sort of puddles of water that enhance what was already there on that asphalt that I had brought into the scene from the content library. So, with everything there, it's much easier with a lit form to color pick, to grab hues and values that are already established in the scene and then just continue to work into them and manipulate. So the sky's the limit at this part of the process. It's a very freeing part of the workflow where you can just start to move forms around, move paint around, and come up with some new shapes and new ideas. So at this stage, this is really just some of the finishing touches, embellishing a few areas, cheating some of the light, because at this stage it really is about the design and the overall look and feel of the piece. So the lighting out of the render got me 95% of the way there. So I'm really just using this last 5% to just polish things up and really make sure it's looking the way I want it to look, and then get it out for presentation. So we've moved into the third design here, and you'll recognize the quilted ski jacket from the sort of urban streetwear set that I applied to the character. You see I've also taken an opportunity to use the render of the visor down for this iteration. It just gives an alternate for the client to look at and to see if they like that look, to see it in use versus up on the forehead there. The addition of the plastic sleeves is new. It was an idea I had as I was comping everything together and rendering stuff. It was not a material out of Character Creator. If I would do over again, I would certainly go back through and do basically what I did on the plastic skirt on the first iteration and do something like that. It's always much easier to work with a render and get that accurate lighting in the scene. But this seemed to get the idea across, and it was fun painting into the file and utilizing all the information that was already there. But you can see the bonus of having the saved camera and being able to render these different comps out is I can pick and choose pieces from each file to bring into the other. So if all of a sudden I decided I wanted those shoulder pads from the first iteration back on top of this one, I could do that. I could comp these together. So that is the benefit of having the three of them together. And you can see here, I'm just kind of A-Bing it back and forth to see how the read on those works. So you can see they're basically one on top of the other. But it's a very freeing process, and it allows you to focus on what's important, and that is the design. So just plussed up some of the lighting with a color dodge tool inside of Photoshop just to embellish that bloom effect a little bit more on the visors and some of the background lighting. I try and keep those background elements consistent across the iterations because I really don't want a whole lot of breakup to distract the client between that. I always want to keep their eye on the prize, and keep it on the design itself. So keeping, there might be some visual interest in the background just to kind of world build, but I don't want it to detract from the character, herself. But, for the most part, you can see where, once you have all that stuff in place, it's much easier to go in and make, modifications. You're basically a photo retoucher at that point. So, with all that beautiful skin detail and information from the skin gen, I could go in and make tweaks as need be, or, smooth out maybe some areas or introduce some additional cut lines because all the information is there. So just embellishing some of the lighting here, bringing up some of that specular material read of both the jacket and that plastic. Sometimes you do want to embellish some areas where maybe it's not accurate per se to like the actual lighting, but you just want to make what looks most visually appealing. And as I mentioned before, just kind of going back and forth, A-Bing it between my first render, which was basically the keystone, and I measure all my other renders against that first one so that they're consistent across the three different iterations. I don't want to introduce anything at this point that could confuse the client. Anything outside of that initial design. So I am moving around the design quite a bit. You'll notice I zoom in, zoom out. That allows me to see the broader picture. You notice I very rarely zoom in all that much unless I'm trying to get some finer details, but I keep it at that thumbnail kind of size or slightly larger to just see the image as a whole. Just the final kind of last post-processing, and as I mentioned before, utilizing what was already in place. So normally this wouldn't be the desired effect, but since she has this kind of, a baby smooth, what you'd imagine would be like silicone or some artificial skin, I went in and smoothed out some of those pores and really tried to play up this cybernetic feel, this artificial quality here. So I removed some of the existing cut lines just to give the potential client just one more thing to look at. So going through making the skin just slightly more shiny in some areas, and removing any blemishes or any inconsistencies in the surface, because we have to basically allude to the fact that maybe she came off of almost like an assembly line or a conveyor belt. So just hitting that with some high specularity, which really gives it that plastic makes it feel a bit more artificial. But once everything's in place, you can have fun with these finishing touches, because everything is there. So it's really about just getting those final elements in place and then calling it, so no more, no less. We work within the allotted amount of time to get our ideas out. So to me, it's about efficiency. And this process has really introduced some incredibly efficient workflows that I will utilize really going forward. It's very exciting stuff. So as we wrap this up, let's take a look at our final concepts. And here are the three together. The first based off of our initial sketch, our second, and our third iteration. I'd like to thank you all so much for checking out this series of introducing Character Creator 3 into your conceptual design pipeline. I'd like to thank the Reallusion crew for inviting me to participate and to take a look at Character Creator 3 and the new skin gen tools inside of it. Now that I've been introduced to this wonderful program, it will be a staple of my character work going forward. Feel free to reach out on any of the social media platforms at Kyle Brown Design, and of course check out Reallusion and the Character Creator team. Stay tuned for some more fun projects on the horizon. I'm already excited to jump into the next series of pieces. As always, happy creating and enjoy, everyone. Thank you again so much for checking these videos out.